now. Okay, so yeah, there were two topics that I had touched on in my video. One was about Pepe getting hit. Like a week later, was it fair? And then the next was about power creep, because you seem to be a stickler for power creep, and I get what you're saying about power creep, but I do understand why it exists. Like what you're saying about remove all power creep from the game, I just don't think it's possible at this point. Not the way the game is currently constructed. Okay, like all right.
Right.
To touch on the Pepe thing, like the way that I look at it is, yeah, it was shitty that Pepe got hit 3 weeks into its life cycle, but to me, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, the very premise of that argument, I disagree with, because you're saying, like, okay, Pepe, you know, like, you're saying, like, okay, it's overpowered and it's never too soon to hit something that's broken. The issue I have with that is the fact that, like I said, if we go to the root of the problem, why is something so broken being put out there through the testing phases, through the R&D team of Konami, to the point where it's going to be banned 3 weeks into its life cycle? It's like, there's a design flaw, you know? It's like, something has gone wrong initially for that to take place. I
get that. That's the issue. That's the issue of power creep. But so you agree that it was fair that Pepe got hit? But I still just don't like, if you're saying that it was wrong for it to get hit 3 weeks into his life, like how does that doesn't make sense to me. Like the fact that it got hit 3 weeks instead of 6 months or a year, that's irrelevant, right?
To an extent, right? But the thing is, right, if we need to take into consideration that we're going to go by Konami's logic, right? So Konami have set out this sort of plan for when they run this game. They create a deck, it runs rampant, destroys everything for like, you know, half a year, 8 months, a year, and then they slaughter it, and then we move on to the next deck. And they've repeated the cycle for like 2, 3, 4 years now, beginning with probably Teledad as, you know, the first sort of, you know, major jump in power creep, right? So that's the cycle they've gotten us used to. Now, if they get us used to that cycle, therefore, I feel like they should be sticking to that cycle, you know? So if they're going to make us play a broken deck for a year, then okay, cool, then let's just play Pepe, because it's a broken deck for a year. Now, I know you could argue that, you know, they've changed their philosophy now because they're going to be giving new ban lists and stuff like that. But again, like, this is me using Konami's logic. I don't want to have to use that logic to begin with, because the real root of the problem, the real issue, is that we have such broken cards. And it's like, why do we need to, like, have things hit in the first place when we could just, you know, Konami could just could just release fair cards?
Okay, all right. So, all right, that's talking about power creep. All right, so I think that they're, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be a Konami apologist, because I was saying in my response video, I don't like power creep. I just understand why it exists. I understand why, if you want Yu-Gi-Oh to continue, like I'm not sure how vested you are. You said you started playing Yu-Gi-Oh about 5D's era?
Like Dragon Rule format? Sorry, Evil Swarm format?
Oh, okay, so Zeal.
If you're going by anime timeline, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, that's Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy.
Okay.
So if you're really, if you're vested in this game, you're like, all right, I've been playing this game for a very long time. I want the game to continue, even after I'm done playing. Like, you know what I mean? Because it makes a lot of people happy. It's fun, yada, yada, yada. But if there was no power, let's just say that Konami said, all right, we're not going to have any more power creep, period, point blank, at all, anymore. We're not going to design archetypes, future archetypes. Let's not even consider the generic stuff, because, like, I mean, that's just going to kind of be there in any game. Let's just say that they said they're not going to make any more future archetypes stronger than the archetypes that we already have in the game. You know, and I know, I'm pretty sure you know, because you play the game competitively, that there's a very significant amount of players that would not move to newer archetypes if there was no essential incentive. Like, I know that there can be lures, there can be nice card art, there can be new mechanics. Oh man, he just walked out on me.
Really? No, I was just closing the door.
There can be new mechanics and lore and all of those, you know, cool things, but it's not enough to sway players who only play the best deck because it's the best deck and no other reason. What do you say to that?
I mean, you got to remember that the competitive player base are they're a minority, right? The casual player base, who like Blackwings, who play Storming Mirror Force because they pulled it and it's shiny. Like, that's the majority of the player base, right? So I feel like, Konami should cater to them because they're the ones who are going to make the money in the end. But if everyone wants, like, a healthy game, right? It's like Konami doesn't need to make
as healthy as possible.
Right,
Well,
as healthy as possible, right? Because this game is pretty broken, right?
Do me this. Explain. When you say healthy game, do you mean healthy from the stance of Yu-Gi-Oh is as fair as possible, or do you mean a stance of Yu-Gi-Oh will be here in 3 years? Because the term healthy can mean different meanings. Yu-Gi-Oh can be the most fair game ever, and then everybody stops playing it and it doesn't exist in a year. And I don't consider that healthy because the game's dead.
I mean, I feel like that the best definition of what a healthy game is that when I sit down to duel my opponent, at the end of that duel, the best player and the person who played their cards best will walk out the winner. That's pretty simple. In terms of like a healthy business policy, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't really tell you like what Konami makes, what makes most money for Konami. But at the end of the day, like, I feel like everyone would be happy with a fairer game, because how many times have you heard the majority of the player base during Necros format be like, oh, I hate that deck of playing blue and stuff, why are you playing blue, and then during Dragon Rules format it's like, oh, I hate that deck, it's so busted, and a lot of the casual player base just hates playing against meta. They always say things like, oh, meta sheep, etc. Why do they say things like meta sheep? What if their decks became meta? They would probably enjoy the game more, they would become competitive.
Can I intervene with a point here?
Go on, Ryan.
Right. Okay. So you said you want a healthy game, like if in a game where the person who played their cards correctly walks away the winner the majority of the time. That's getting along the lines of like chess and other games like that, where Yu-Gi-Oh has a different side to it. It has a side of variance and a side of luck, and you will get sacked in certain games, but it's more fun.
That's what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
It's more fun, and if you balance the game and made it like these 8 fair decks, right, that all had a good chance of like beating each other, and it was a really diverse format, you would still have the so-called like casual player base playing their gladiator beasts and saying, "Oh my God, you're playing Blackwings. They're so overpowered. I hate you, meta." It's exactly the same, except the format would be a bit more diverse.
I was gonna say that exact same thing. Like the casual players hating on meta, and I do it too. I play the game competitively, but I still hate the fucking meta players. I guess I define that as just Pepe right now, or just Pepe recently. Like, it would still be the same. If you still had those 8 decks, you'd still have somebody playing Cloudy and saying, "Yeah, I can't believe you use Blackwings." They're so like as long as decks have differences. As long as decks have differences, there will always... There's
but the thing is, right, we have to kind of set like a sort of objective standard, right? If we say that, okay, I understand totally that there will always be people complaining about, the other deck, and the grass is always greener when it comes to deck choices and stuff like that. I totally understand that. But, even the most hardcore competitive, like, anti-casual player in Yu-Gi-Oh! Will admit that when someone says, "Oh, you're playing Necros, that's so unfair," and they're sitting with Glad Beasts, you can kind of sympathize with that. You'd understand where they're coming from. It is broken.
Yeah, I agree. But okay, here's another reason why. Actually, I think this is more of a definitive reason. That's nothing to do with business standpoint or anything like that. I think that power creep has to exist because certain mechanics just are inherently not as good as others. Like, okay, let's not even go on the pendulum, because they completely fucked that mechanic up. In my opinion, the only way that pendulum would have been balanced is if when the cards were destroyed, they went to the graveyard, because then the risk and reward would have been proportional. It's very unfair that if I fairy wind your, let's say, Luster Pendulum and Master Pendulum, they're 5 and 3, right? That the fact that they go to the extra deck, you can play 2 more scales, and then you can pin back the cards that I just killed. So it's like you really didn't lose anything. But if you look at other mechanics in the past, the Ritual Summon and the Fusion Summon are perfect examples. If Konami didn't adjust Necros to power creep, there would have been no reason to play Necros. And from the standpoint of maybe somebody is just a fan of ritual cards, like, if Necrons weren't as powerful as they were, they would have come out, they would have sucked dick, and nobody like we would have never had a competitive ritual deck. Like we've only had essentially 2 competitive ritual decks ever in Yu-Gi-Oh, and one of them is Necrons.
Yeah, but the thing is, like with Necros, like Necros would have been a fair deck if they didn't give every single Necros card 3 effects. One effect in the hand, 1 effect in the graveyard, 1 effect on the field. Like, if they want to make a competitive ritual deck, sure. Like, I'm sure, like, there's a testing process for this. They could have, like, maybe made it so that the mirrors wouldn't replace each other. Maybe made it so that, the Necros cards didn't do anything in hand. Like, there is ways to balance it. Like, even the ban list right now. Like, Necros, I feel like if they still had a Shrit, just one simple Shrit, I feel like they would still be okay. Because Unicorn is a powerful card. Like, the thing is, like, I understand they need to sell product, and one of the incentives of selling product is making cards more powerful and stuff like that. But, there's a balance, you don't you don't go from like Glad Beast and then, hey guys, look at this new set, and it's like freaking, triple Bryanak, Trish, and like Valks, and all these kind of cards that are just absolutely nuts, like absolutely insane, some of these cards, like compared to what we've like got in the game. So like when they made Necros, they could have just make it powerful. I understand that, but it doesn't need to be exponential. Like the difference and the bar set by Necros was on a whole new level. Like it doesn't need to be that high.
But don't you understand? Like the fusion summon mechanic and the ritual summon mechanic are just inherently not cost effective. Thus, to me, there is no reason ever to play a ritual deck over an Exceed deck, because why would you invest 3 monsters to summon, or why would you invest 3 cards to summon 1 monster when you can invest 2 cards to summon 1 monster? Like, for you to ritual summon, you have to play a ritual spell, you have to pay the monster you want to summon, and then you have to pay the cost for the ritual spell. Let's say it's another monster. Sometimes it's 2, but let's say it's another monster. If you invest 3 cards into 1 monster and it gets like bottomless, you pretty much lose at that point. Why would you ever do that when you can invest 2 cards into a synchro summon, 2 cards into an Exceed summon, and generally get the same type of power out of your boss Exceed monster, out of your boss synchro summon monster? Like, it was the same thing. It's the same reason why they had to power creep Shadows, because the fusion summon mechanic as a whole just didn't work. Like, there was no reason to invest a fusion spell, a payment for the fusion spell, into that 1 monster when it's just not economical, and that's the reason people didn't play them. Well, the only time people play fusions is when you could contact fusion with Glad Beast, which is essentially the same type of thing as like a synchro.
Yeah, but the thing is, like
certain mechanics are just not economical.
Like, I feel like where you're going with this is like way too specific, and you're getting bogged down by semantics. I don't know what the solution to that is. I feel like Shrit is a good example of removing the sort of heavy cost payment for making a ritual summon. I can't tell you what the exact game mechanics they should have done are. All I'm simply saying is, like, they should have made it so that Necros was a powerful deck, and they would have done something to address the cost inefficiency of ritual monsters, as an inherent problem to ritual monsters. Konami, they're the design team, they come up with it. All I'm simply saying that as a general guideline, that the monsters that they make, the archetypes that they make, should be powerful, sure, should be strong, should be on par with what's currently available, but not to the extent that Necros was. Like, not to the extent that Dragon Rulers was. Not to the extent that Pepe was. Pepe should be stronger than what's currently available, but it should not be 29 out of 32 YCS top strong, Yeah,
I completely agree. Well, at least I agree with Performages and Pals, and Dragon Rulers. Dragon Rulers, I looked at those cards before they even came out, and I was like, these are just going to be accelerants. They're going to be broken. With Necros, I don't agree, because, like I said, Yu-Gi-Oh's almost 20 years old. Like, it's kind of unacceptable for us not to have a more competitive ritual summoner monsters, or more competitive ritual summons. Yes, there could have been tweaking here and there to try and make the ritual summon like more cost efficient, but the mechanic as a whole is just not as good as other mechanics. So like,
yeah, but so what you're saying here is that because the mechanic isn't cost efficient, in order to counterbalance that, they should make the monsters themselves extremely powerful.
Yes, but you just don't agree with that.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's like, you know, if the issue is cost efficiency, like Necros is a powerful deck. Like if you look at, for example, ARG format, right? They banned Trishula, and did they limit Unicore, I think, as well at one point? There was a period in time during ARG format where they hit Necros a lot more correctly, should I say, than Konami, and they like did amazing. Like they were still the best deck. You know, because they had things like Valk and stuff, which is like, you know, a problem for a lot of decks. It generates a lot of advantage. It's cost inefficient, sure, but you know, Konami like designed cards like Shrit, you know, which is a very good way of getting the best efficiency out of your ritual summon. You have Herald of the Arclight, you know, so when you summon Unicore, it's not like you know, a broken summon, because it's like you break even when you summon Unicore, right? I feel like, you know, if they banned Herald of Arclight, for example, Unicore could potentially be a balanced card. Like, I mean, like I'm saying, I don't want to get too into the semantics. I don't want to get too much into the details. All I'm simply saying is that, you know, there's a gap, and it's too big.
Okay. Also, do you think that Konami's R&D can catch as many? Hold on for a second. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Do we have a new match for the next round up? Is anyone available?
I've messaged my opponent, but he's not replied yet.
Oh, okay.
He's on the list.
And actually,
earlier.
I'd like to make a point. It's in regards to this whole R&D that Konami have now. I don't believe that R&D are idiots. Okay, I think they probably catch a lot of stuff and look into a lot of the cards that they release. Okay. So
sure?
They've had Perform Agent Pals. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. They've had Perform Agent Pals in the OCG in some kind of form for maybe like the last 6-9 months, and they have absolutely destroyed the OCG, like dominated it for absolutely ages. And now the cards are coming out in TCG, and they go through research and design and research and development for the guys to kind of analyze and have a look, okay, and see what's coming over. So the R&D guys must know these cards are busted. So I can't really see any other motive for Konami to release this set and the cards other than to generate sales and get everyone excited in the secondary market by releasing an absolutely broken deck. Okay?
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Tier 1, tier
Exactly.
0.5 deck. Okay? So Konami haven't released these cards and then saw a tournament result and said, oh no, these cards are broken, we must ban them. They've actually released them knowing what fine well they're broken, knowing fine well they'd sell loads at the set, and then they've banned them 3 weeks later and shafted everyone in the secondary market.
Yeah.
Now, not only did they do that, they hid it in the most cutest way possible. The only card they actually banned or limited from the set
was the common
Monkey Board. They hit everything else that wasn't in that set.
Yeah.
And like that just stinks of like
I mean, I mentioned that in my video. I said, like, you know, they kept Wizard at 3 because that's a secret rare, you know, but the common,
it's a new
they
set.
hit
You
the
can't
common.
possibly ban something. So when you talk to them,
I completely agree.
So when you
I
ask
noticed
them
that a
about
while
it,
ago too.
they're like, you banned all the cards from the set, and they're like, no, we didn't. We just limited Monkey Board. What do you mean? And you're like,
nothing
no,
wrong.
you've completely destroyed the deck that you were promoting for the last 3 months, that you've promoted in all these sets that are sold out of stores, and that all these sets are going to have to get ordered back in. And you've got shops, and you've got retailers, you've got like wholesalers who are really pissed off because you've promoted this set for so long, and now a lot of it's going to be dead weight.
Yeah.
After they've ordered another 60 cases for their stores.
I've got a point, if I could say something.
And you, Elliot.
Go ahead.
Do you remember the Judgment of the Light set when we got, I think it was just the TCG imports, exclusives or OCG imports, and we got announced that we were getting a Rooster? And obviously that Firefist 3-Axis deck just went absolutely crazy, everyone was hyping it, it was definitely going to be the best deck no matter what, it was so far ahead of everything. And the emergency, well, they didn't emergency limit it, but they preemptively hit Spirits 1, didn't they? And then they just basically made that deck like almost unviable. Like, it was still obviously great, but it was nowhere near what it wants. And like all these pre-orders almost thirded in price. So obviously they shafted a few people out of pre-orders and everything, but they showed that they could preemptively hit stuff then. So why couldn't they have preemptively hit Monkey Board in the scenario?
Yeah,
You mean limited? They used to do that in the past. I don't know why they arbitrarily stopped doing it. Like they did it with They didn't do it with Stratos, but they did it like way back in the GX era with like Green Baboon. He was legal for a YCS for at 3, but like immediately it was like mid format. He went to 1 like right after the YCS. But okay, so now here. So you believe that there's nothing that the R&D team can't catch essentially, as far as broken cards.
You mean I think that they're simply unaware, or
Yes. No, not in all cases. I just mean in certain cases, because I think that there is no way humanly possible that Konami's R&D team can catch all of this.
Yeah, I mean, like,
no.
of course, a few things are gonna seep through the cracks. Like, you know, I don't know how like the exact ways they test decks are, but if you like, for example, FTKs, right? I'm probably, you know, if I was a betting man, I would probably put a lot of money on saying that Konami never intend for an FTK to get through the testing phase. You know, no matter how much product they're trying to say, I feel like an FTK would be a good example of things seeping through the cracks of the R&D team. But
That's
when it
exactly
comes
where
to
I was gonna go.
yeah,
Okay.
but when it comes to other cards, you know, I feel like Konami, you know, are more than aware of how good Necros of Unicor is, of how good, freaking, like the E-Dragons were, you know, as a synergy.
So you're talking about like archetype specific cards.
Just, I mean, I'm pretty sure Konami
No,
was
no,
aware of how
I
good
completely
Soul
agree
Charge
with-
was, right? Look at Soul Charge, right? I'm sure they knew that thing
Yeah,
was like nuts.
I agree. I made a video about Soul Charge. I think I titled it "Now Every Single Deck Has Access to Rekindling." Something of that. I thought Soul Charge was absurd when they first when they first announced that card. I was just like, why?
Yeah, and
You
it
know
was
what I mean?
proven by like the results of that era. Like, you know, entire decks were being designed around Soul Charge. You know, that Mythic Dragons became a thing during 2014 because Soul Charge was a thing. Sylvans were only good because of Soul Charge, you know? So
I completely agree. There are certain times where I look at Konami and I'm just like, you clearly fucked up in designing this card. Cleefort Towers is like the best recent example ever of a card that just should have never gotten through research and development. But I think that there are a lot of times where they may release a card and it synergizes with a card from the GX era or from the 5Ds era, and
Yeah.
it's just not something that they can catch.
I feel like a good example of that would be, for example, maybe like Super Rejuve. You know, they probably didn't intend for you to draw 12 in the end phase after using
You
the
did
baby
use that
dragons.
as a specific example in your video, though.
Sorry?
I said you used that as a specific, because that's exactly what I thought. I was like, there's no way when they created elemental dragons, which we all agree should not have been created, that they would have caught something like Super Rejuve. Because I don't know when it came out, but it was a fucking super old card. Like, they probably weren't thinking. I mean, I guess they could have hypothetically looked up every single dragon card ever that could synergize with them. I just don't think that they were going to do that, especially not as fast as like the players can. Because I don't know, I can't even guess how big Konami's R&D team is, but I would just imagine that for every one of them, maybe 15, 2,000 players. You know what I mean? Like, somewhere around that, 3,000-4,000 players, 5,000 players per every one person that's on the R&D team.
I mean, who knows, right? I mean, I really don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
they don't tell us these things for a reason.
No, I get what you're saying. But and then I also think that, like, there are also cards that are only quote unquote broken for a certain time span. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that people can blame Konami because Naturia Beast was suddenly broken 2 months ago. You know what I mean? Like, how's that Konami's fault that a card that never saw play during the 5Ds era, during the Zeal era, people finally realized, like, hey, you know what? We've got X-Saber Palomaru, and we can search that from King of the Fro Imps, which is a card that we already play in this deck, which is a hybrid deck anyway.
I feel like, you know, we would have to get into specific examples and stuff, and, you know, there are lots of examples where, you know, old cards are suddenly like broken again, but they're extremely rare. Like, I just can't really think that, you know, that, for example, like Nat Beast didn't define a format. Like, it saw play, but it wasn't like, you know, it didn't define the end of last year's format. Like, without a doubt.
Of
like,
course
people,
it did, but you still had people that were like, "Yo, Nat Beast is so broken, it needs to be banned." Did you not hear that? Like, there were a lot of YouTubers.
yeah, but I mean,
YouTubers
I don't
saying,
know. Like, do you
Nat
guys
Beast-
here
should
think
Nat
that
Beast
Nat
be
Beast was
banned?
ban-worthy?
Huh? What's that?
Like, does anyone here in this call, like, do any of you guys think Nat Beast was ban worthy?
It's fair because you have to build your deck around it. Like, you can't just summon it really, really easily. You have to draw into the right pieces to get it up.
Yeah, it's a big cost sort of thing, you know? It's like, it's not simple to, you can't just shit out Nat Beasts, you know, unless you're playing Raccoons.
It was
or
quite
something.
easy to out as well. Like, it wasn't like Towers was when Towers was first, like, released.
Yeah.
I completely agree. But the fact that the discussion was there is, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, but
kind
do
of
you,
alarming.
Randall, do you not think that, you know, people will always complain about anything? Like, come on.
They will. They will.
Of course. That's why. That's part of like my. That's part of my why the meta, quote unquote, will never be fair, because people will always complain about something.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's our job for us to look at it objectively and say, okay, some of these people complaining, you know, some of their concerns are legitimate. Now, other people's concerns are not legitimate, like the example that you gave earlier of, you know, Glad Beast players moaning at Blackwing players. You know, if that ever happened, you know, you're just salty, you know. But there are, you know, considering if we look at last year, there is legitimate concern to say that Necros was too far. There is legitimate concern behind Dragon Rulers being too far. There isn't legitimate concern between, you know, someone just complaining about, you know, a couple things here and there, which would probably suggest that we're in a kind of decent position game-wise, don't you think?
Okay, but okay,
I mean,
but you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like, these types of things will always happen because there's always going to be a best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then you're always going to have to build your deck around the fact that there's a better deck that exists if you're playing something that's not the best deck. So for example, like Necros, you have Shadal's maining like Mistake and stuff like that just to counteract it. And then you have people, for example, in the recent YCS, we got the Cosmo that made it to the end, like to top 4. He was running anti-spell fragrance to counter all the Pepe that he knew he'd face. So I mean, like, as long as a best deck exists, you're always going to have to build your deck around the fact that there's a better deck that exists if you're not playing the best deck.
Yep. And I feel like the game shouldn't be defined like that strictly, you know, where...
It's always going to be defined, though. That's the problem.
But now here, isn't that how, like, don't even look at this in Yu-Gi-Oh terms. Isn't that how every competitive thing is? Whether it's Super Smash Brothers or League of Legends or called, like, you know what I mean? This gun is too powerful at this point. We need to nerf it. We need to adjust it. Next thing we know, everybody jumps to this gun. Everybody who's on the M16 or blah, blah, blah. I don't play COD. League of Legends. They come out with a patch. Okay, this guy is seeing too much play. We need to nerf him a little bit. We need to buff this character. Street Fighter. Isn't that how every competitive game is?
Yeah, but, you know, like I said, you know, some of these concerns are legitimate and other concerns are illegitimate. Like, some people complain for the sake of complaining and they're just salty. Other players do have legitimate concerns, you know?
Okay, so you think that you think or do not think that there is a need for the ban list?
I mean, like, there is the need for the ban list, you know, because some things should be kept in check. It should be there for tweaking, you know, but I think that the way Konami have used the ban list recently is not as a way of tweaking things. Konami aren't tweaking things with the ban list. They are using the ban list as a marketing tool. They are using the ban list as a floodgate. They're not using it for what a ban list should be used for, don't you think?
No, I agree. I would say the last 2 or 3 ban lists have been really questionable. But, I mean, and I hate to use the this is how it's. I mean, this isn't anything new. This is courts, or this is par for the course. You may not have been playing in March 2012. This is like one of the most notorious examples of when in sectors it was Order of Chaos had just been released. What's that?
That was the Dino Rabbit Insector format,
Dino
right?
Rabbit versus Insectors versus Chaos Dragons.
Yeah,
First
something
wind-up.
to that nature. But they did. Yeah, it was really more wind up. It was wind ups, Dino Rabbits, and Insectors. And they Order of Chaos had just been released, and Konami decided to essentially rape plants instead of hitting those decks entirely. It was like, oh, okay, wind up hitting 5 cards out of your hand, that's fair, but let's go ahead and hit plants, a deck that was kind of getting phased out anyways. You know what I mean? So it's like it's really nothing new to me, which is why it's not shocking. Like, I do understand that it does seem like it's kind of more a marketing ploy. I think that the ban list should be used more so to catch things that fall through the cracks and when a deck just gets absolutely absurd. I mean, it happens sometimes, and also like FTK, LTKs. I feel like that's falling through the cracks. Like, there's no way that Konami could have known that Subsitoad was going to be primarily used in an FTK deck.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that they knew. I think that some kid sat in his room for 15 hours and was like, holy shit. Like, Eureka, I broke in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, or like Gishki loops and
You can't
stuff.
blame Konami for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like the Gishki loops as well. Like, you know, I don't think they intended for people to have 40-minute turns that deck your opponent out, you know?
Yeah, I totally forgot about same exact concept. But like there are certain cards where I'm just like, I honestly think we give their research and development team way too much credit. I don't think that they go in knowing like some of these cards, like, all right, 2 sets, this card is going to be broken as fuck. Like,
Do you not mean we don't give them enough credit? Is that not what you mean?
No, I think we give them too much credit.
So
like,
you think we're not harsh enough?
No, I think we're being too harsh on there. I think that they're just people that play the game. I don't think that they're skillful. I don't think they're the most skillful players. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think we're expecting too much out of their R&D. Like, I think for some examples, like Towers, okay, what the fuck were you doing, R&D?
Yeah, but
don't tell me you
like,
didn't know that.
That's their job, man. Like, that's why they have a job. Like, that's their thing to do.
I agree. Luster Pendulum, broken or not?
See, Luster Pendulum is a little different because I feel like, you know,
it boosts every deck, not just one.
Yeah, like it's good for every Pendulum deck, and I don't think, you know, their intent. Like, I don't feel like Luster Pendulum is broken. I think that, like, it's good because, you know, it fills your extra deck, thins your deck, and it just gives you, you know, more fuel for the Pendulum summon. And you know, when Luster Pendulum was around last year, with the magicians and stuff,
it was a $5
like,
card.
Yeah, like, it was, everyone played it in the
$5 card out of Clash of Rebellion, and nobody thought anything of it.
Yeah, but, you know, and then they had the Perform Mages, which, you know, provided a lot of synergy. But the thing is, like, I probably would, you know, believe if the R&D team were here somehow telling me that, oh, we didn't know that the combo between Luster Plush Fire was so broken. I could probably believe that they didn't intend for that to happen. But if we look at other examples, you know, like Monkey Board being a 1-card scale, I feel like, you know, they knew what they were doing, you know. If they let Luster Pendulum fall through the cracks, that's cool. But Monkey Board, I'm sorry, but that is not okay. You know, something like Necros of Unicorn, that is not okay. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think Unicorn is broken.
Are you kidding me? That like
honestly,
that shut down like 50% of decks that ever existed.
It was powerful, but like the way that I look at Necros is, I mean, the fact that it's a ritual deck means you really can't play traps like ever. I mean, granted, your monsters are, I guess, half traps, you know, because they have defensive like capabilities. But I mean,
yeah, but like,
I just still can't get past the fact that it's a ritual deck is always going to be inherently flawed.
I mean, if we look at, for example, the example of Unicorn, right? What you have is a card that is a trap, right? Because, you know, they don't play physical purple cards, but it's a skill drain on legs, and it's a skill drain on legs that can't be, you know, destroyed reliably. You need to play like Raigeki and Dark Holes, which, you know, that would dilute your combo deck. That would make your deck inherently worse because you're not playing combo cards. You can't attack over it because they have a Valk in hand. They can protect it from being targeted with Trishula. Like, imagine, imagine you had that much searchable utility for your skill drain. Imagine you flip skill drain, right? You pay 1,000, right? And you had like 3 different ways to protect your skill drain. How is that fair?
You're essentially, if you had that much protection for your skill drain, it probably wouldn't be. I'm not sure that that's quite a like comparison.
But it is.
You know
like,
what I mean?
I mean, Unicorn is a skill drain for like any deck that used the extra deck, which was, you know, half the meta at that time.
For Xyz and Synchro, yeah, but not against something like Cleaford that'd just be like pinned. You made our monster stronger. Attack.
I mean, yeah, but
I mean,
Clifford was the only deck keeping Necros in check.
But it was a very relevant example at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, if you took all power creep out of Yu-Gi-Oh,
right,
would the game continue? Just hypothetically, in your best estimation, would the game be around and be as popular as it is? Let's just say 2 years from now?
I mean, I've thought about this before, and it's just a very simple example. You know, there's a reason until today in 2016 people still play goat mirrors. You know what I mean? There's a reason for that. It's that
Because
simple.
they like the format.
Exactly.
I hate that format.
Exactly.
By the way, too.
You know?
It was pretty
I think it's. Go ahead.
I mean, like, it's basically drawing a trinity. It's not a very fair format.
No, I think a lot of people romanticize a lot of formats like after they aren't a thing anymore. Like I think that it's very common for us to hate what's in now, and then once it's over, we kind of romanticize it. Like I couldn't tell you how many people at the regionals I went to last week that are like, man, I missed Necros. That was so fun, and but during the time they're like, oh, Necros is so bad. So it's like you always kind of have this mindset of it's the sky is always falling right now, and then when we're past that, you kind of look back and you're like, wow, that was actually really great times. But I think that's just a continuing cycle. Do you not?
I mean,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, people don't you hear people say all the time, Teledad was the most skillful format ever? Don't you hear that all the time?
I mean, of course, like that's how we love to look at history. You know, we put on our rose-tinted goggles, and
did you hear anybody who who wasn't playing like everybody fucking hated it? Like if you weren't playing Teledad, you think there was no one who was talking good about Teledad except the people who played. I feel like it is the same conversation that the Pepe players are having now. Like
I mean,
they loved the Pepe the Pepe mirror matches, but everybody else hated it. It's the same thing with Teledad.
If there were like a better option, like an option of another deck, I'm pretty sure like a lot of people would like it. But right now, the other decks you're left with are Monarch and Cosmo, both of which are very linear, very bricky sort of decks. Like it doesn't have the same consistency, and you just feel good playing it.
Okay. I guess this will be my last point. Last call. Do you think that you have to play the best deck? Because you said in your video that you're kind of forced to play the broken decks. I don't agree with that. I guess the term broken is objective, but do you believe that you have to play quote unquote the best deck of the format to be successful?
I don't think you have to. You don't have to. Like
I define successful on the highest level. I'm talking YCS regional. And yes, it will vary, but it will vary from format to format, but I just mean in general.
Like if you want to do well, you do everything in your power to do well. If you're an athlete, you train, you do everything in your power to give you the best chance of attaining that goal. And that includes giving yourself the tools in order to attain that goal. And if that means playing the best deck, then that's what you have to do.
Okay, so you're saying that is what so you believe during Necros format, which I don't even like using that term, that you had to play Necros, right?
I mean, initially, like, yeah, like,
I mean, like, you have to have a deck that can counter it or play it. That's the only thing.
yeah, like, there was a reason why Clifford did okay during that format, because they stood a chance, But, like, if you just look at the simple results of a very, very, very large pool sample of data, there is undeniable fact that Necros was the best deck. So therefore, you give yourself.
No. I completely agree. Necros being the best deck that's inarguable. The question is, would you say that you had to play it? Like you couldn't say, well, I have to play Necros. I have to play the most broken deck because that's all there is. I can't.
I feel like the Necros example is kind of an anomaly, because. Sure, if you want to do well at this game, you need to give yourself the best chance to do well at this game, and you need to play the best deck in order to do that. But it's a little bit different because with Necros format was a very, very skill-intensive format. There was no real deck innovation or creativity. So you had to be a very good technical player to do well in that format. And I did actually make a video on this, talking about which deck do you play in Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't feel like playing the best deck is always the best option. Because some people just aren't good enough to handle Necros. Like that was a very, very difficult to use deck. But I feel like if you were good enough and if you practice hard enough, the best way that you would move forward as a player would, without a doubt, play Necros.
Okay, but then what is the response to the fact that, like at the North American WCQs, are you aware of that event?
Well, like when Noah Green won with Burning Abyss.
Yeah, the finals was a Burning Abyss mirror match, and the same amount of players that top 8 at that event playing Necros also ran Ritual Beast. So I look at everybody who's like, oh, well, we have to play Necros. We have to play the most broken deck. Well, 50% of the top 8 wasn't Necros, so you don't have to play Necros.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you need to understand, like, there's results-oriented thinking and there's variance in the game. You know, you can't just look at, like, you know, a pool sample of 4 and, you know, be like the top, 8, and like look at the top 8 and say, oh, well, 50% aren't Necros. Like, that's one isolated case. You need to look at multiple examples, you need to look at multiple tournaments, and you need to theorize these things as well, because you can't just like pick up a deck and play it and say like, oh, you know, I like this deck and it's good or whatever. You have to actually, like, you know, understand each card, like card for card, examining the archetype itself. Card for card, Necros is superior to every other deck of its time. Now, because it lost, there are other, but there's reasons why it didn't do well at that event. It's, you know, because floodgates are a thing, and, you know, there's a lot of variance in Yu-Gi-Oh. Some, like, as a Necros player, you're, no matter how good you are at this game, for example, we look at the finals of the European Championship, which Shadal's versus Necros.
This one, right?
He opened triple Rota against Mistake. Do you know what I mean? Like, you as a player, you're not good enough to fight through that.
But, I would also like. Sorry, when you talk about a best deck, it's not just like about the deck that wins all the time. If you look at the top 8 of or whatever of the North American WCQ, it was Necros and decks built specifically to beat Necros. Like, even like all the Ritual Beast deck, like main, like all these floodgates specifically for Necros, whereas if Necros didn't exist, they wouldn't have to play all these cards.
Yeah, exactly.
It refers mainly to a deck that defines a format.
I hear you, but a card like Mistake was also good against. A card like Mistake was kind of good across the board. Like, it was good against Sertalo Knights. It was good against like Cleaford, turn 1 Scout. No, you're not going to search. Turn 1 Rhoda, turn 1 Deneb. No, you're not going to search. Like, those were a very big part of the meta. So like that was just a good floodgate card against the most of the meta.
Yeah, but you need to understand, like, when you put Mistake in your deck going into that event, your primary concern is Necros. Like, you're not putting that in for Telenites, you know, you're putting that in for Necros.
No, I know that. I'm not saying that, you know, people were playing that because of X, Y, and Z. I'm just saying, if it's a floodgate that helped across the board, if Necros never existed, there's still a decent chance that it may have been played. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like,
do you like, as a question to you, do you not think that because of the fact that people were putting in cards that happened to hit the best deck of the format, that in itself proves it was the best deck?
Yes, but the question is not what is the best deck. The question is, or the point I'm making is, you can't make an excuse that you have to play the best / broken deck just because it's the best / broken deck. Because if you look at historically the results of Yu-Gi-Oh, like, a lot of times the best deck ends up getting countered by other. Like, I feel like, okay, so what changed between Nationals and Secret Forces being released? Like, what changed? Because to me, nothing. There was no new cards released. Like, what changed? Why couldn't people just play Mistake back then?
I mean, there was like some consistency issues. Like, you know, Necros did lose like 4 searchers, 1 Bryanak, 2 Prep, and
okay,
no,
yeah, they lost
3.
Okay,
so, I mean, I know that's not enough to like completely warrant that the deck wasn't good enough, and that. But I totally understand what you're saying. Like, you know, nothing really changed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nothing really changed. So it's like, well, why did this work then, but it didn't work before? If that makes any sense. Like, why would people say, "Oh, Necros tier 0, we can't beat it with anything else," but nothing really changed?
Yeah, but like, even after that format, Necros had all the results. You know, like they had all the, you know, most regional tops, wins, whatever. And they had most of the top cut at these premier events, at Euros, at the North American Nationals. They had the most, like, tops of these events, you know? And, you know, just because they didn't happen to take everything in the top 8, you know, I feel like that is, like, not really disproving it, because, you know, like I said, variance exists in this game. In order to counter the best deck, you have to floodgate them, and the only way to get rid of a floodgate is to draw the out. If you don't draw the out, you know, there's not much you can do about that. But I think, like, to go back to the initial question, I guess, of like, do you need to play the best deck? You don't need to play the best deck. I personally, in that format, I grinded DN quite a lot during that format. I did better with Burning Abyss than I ever did with Necros because I'm personally not a very good player. So I played a deck that gave me the best chance of doing well at this game, and the best chance that I had of doing this game was playing a deck that was competitive, but was easier to play. And that means I got better results, because I wasn't good enough to handle that deck. And I feel like the reason for that is because, you know, if you take something that is good and that is competitive, you will do well with it, you know, if it sort of fits, you know, your current position. And if you're not good enough to play Necros, then, you know, you play something that gives you the best results in that case.
Did you feel like you innovated at all?
I mean, I feel like decks like Burning Abyss did have room for innovation, because
But did you feel like in your builds? Because I feel like even though I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is such an archetype specific game now that people just aren't very innovative anymore. And I feel like
There's
people
not room
use
to be innovative anymore.
But they look down on creativity. Like if you make some really creative build, it might not perform as well, and there's no way. Like you don't want to put that risk of you not topping because you tried something fun instead of
well, I mean,
what you know.
but look at Pepe. Like that entire deck is creativity and innovation. Like though that entire deck is made up of smaller archetypes. Like Perform Mages and Perform Pals are not the same archetype. Then you've got Draco Slayers and Draco Overlords being thrown in there also, and then you have people throwing in other techs like you know, Palamaru and the guy in, what was it, the Australian one or something like that. He ran like Rescue Rabbit and he got like second place. So like if you look at that deck is completely innovation. That's not an archetype.
It's not though.
Like
it's
Cosmo.
just. But it's not innovative if you actually think about it, because the whole problem the problem with all of those archetypes that you just mentioned is they don't do enough by themselves. Performer Pals don't win the game. All Performer Pals do is set you up a pendulum scale. Draco Slayers don't set up a good pendulum scale. Sure, Draco Face-Off is a good card and it can help enforce that, but at the end of the day, it's not something that creates a good pendulum scale, so it can't further its game state enough to put the guys on board. Because what Draco Slayers is good at is it's good at making big creatures and making boards so that it can win the game. And that can't do it by itself, but with Performer Pals, it can do it. Because that makes it help it advance its game state to a point where the Draco Slayers can actually continue to do what they're supposed to be doing. It's the same with like the Perform Mages as well, because Perform Mages are like the intermediate between the two. Like they can help like create boards, and they can help in the fact that they can make pendulum scales, but they can't make pendulum scales as efficiently as Performer Pals, which is why they added that into it, because like the whole idea is you want to make it so that it's as efficient as possible, to make it so that all of these engines work to do what they're supposed to do, so that you can make an end game as quick as possible, or to make a turn one board as quick as possible.
I think another good example of that would be like Hat. You know, Hat was inherently like a very bad deck, and I know you would probably argue that it was innovation, Randall, but you know, like everything that Tom just said, like it's you're taking the best out of everything and putting it into one deck. And sure, the first initial time that was done, that was creative and innovative, but then it becomes the standard and default for the meta, and everyone plays it, and then now you're left with no more innovation.
It's not even that. It's just them putting in cards to make up for the lack of what the other decks are missing. And that's what everyone's doing at the end of the day.
I get what you're saying. Okay, but let's just say you looked at it from Konami's perspective. If Konami saw things exactly the way you did, and you say, well, Performages can't do this, Draco Overlords and Draco Slayers can't do this, and Performer Pals can't do this, what is more likely? For you to increase the power of the card so that they can do X, Y, and Z, or for you to expect the players, or for your R&D team, to combine those archetypes together and make one deck?
I don't think the R&D team intended to merge those decks together.
That depends
of
on
course
what
they did.
They did. I'm fairly certain they did, because
You thought that they would make Pepe? That Pepe was a thing? Because Pepe evolved from Trick Clown in the OCG like a year and a half, a year ago. That was the first initial build was Trick Clown, and it was Clownblade. Clownblade. Yeah, it evolved from Clownblade, and then we eventually just got more, and then that got a little bit consistent, a little more consistent, and then it eventually ended up being Performages and Pals with, I guess, kind of the same concept
Well,
being exceeded. But you think this was all calculated and planned?
It
The
depends on
thing
what
is-
Konami's end goal was.
I'm sure
Because we
Konami.
can't.
Like I'm pretty
I mean,
sure
I
they
think their
planned.
end goal was just to sell Performa Pals because it works directly with the anime.
But like you know what ended up happening? Like the thing that pushed the deck over the top, because Monkey Board didn't come out until Bosch, which was like November. But the deck, like Pepe, was still alive like very early because they had the plush fires and everything really early on, and they had Pendulum Sorcerer, which could pop both and get you so much advantage. So this is all before Monkey Board was even legal. But the thing you have to note is that Pendulum Sorcerer was a promo. So is Wisdom Eye. They were both promos from like Jump or something like that. So like the unfair thing is it didn't come out in a main set. They released like it was a separate entity that released really broken cards that introduced into the game. Like all the main set, I'm pretty sure R&D would test everything. But when you have like magazine promos and other promos that people just introduce into the game, like these people who come out with these ideas might not balance it as well as R&D. Like they might not work with R&D to balance out the cards in general, which is why they ended up hitting
So-
Wisdom Eye.
Okay, so then so you're saying that you would blame Konami or would not blame Konami in a case of like Performages and Pals for
You
it
can't
getting so out of hand?
like I'm
Because
pretty sure like
I wouldn't.
to blame.
I mean,
I
I
wouldn't because
personally disagree. Like, I feel like Konami didn't really intend for that to happen. But like Jerry did give the example that it was sort of a linear kind of evolution in time because they did sort of see it firsthand. And I feel like initially they probably didn't intend that to be the case, but then they saw that it was happening, and then they thought, okay, well, I mean, we might as well just go in this direction. And they made, powerful decks, and it was there to make them money. Like in the end, that's
You
really
mean
the main
TCG
goal.
or OCG?
In the OCG.
That's
Okay,
how
okay.
it. Yeah.
I mean, let's be real though. The R&D isn't the best because they completely just disregarded the whole wind-up thing back when wind-ups were the best deck. And R&D even like admitted that they didn't really realize about the whole shock lock when it was actually a possible thing. So like R&D is at fault one time or another during the game, multiple occasions. So that is a massive problem with it. Plus, you have the problem of Konami doesn't have the same people creating every single card. You have people in Europe creating cards. You have people in America creating cards. You have people in Japan creating cards, and they're not all in one room to discuss. They're not in one room to discuss everything, and it does create a lot of problems because, like for instance, I don't post this on Facebook, and I prefer if you didn't actually post this onto YouTube either. But if you do, whatever. But like, I've heard,
It's going on YouTube, Tom.
okay, I might as well go into it anyway. But like, Japan actually has a lot of influence over this game. Like for TCG, regardless if people actually know it or not, because regardless of the fact that we have our own separate list, like for instance, let's say October 2014, right? Everyone was ringing into Konami because everyone was wondering why it was taking so long for the lists. Konami was
Yeah, I
getting
remember that. I
annoyed.
did a video on it.
The whole problem was, I don't think people realize this, but Konami were actually trying to argue with Japan because they actually wanted a much bigger list. And one of the things that TCG is trying to do is actually hit a lot more floodgates because they understand that floodgates are a massive problem in this game. And the problem is Japan doesn't seem to understand that cards like Rivalry of Warlords and Goza Match are actually ridiculously unfair and powerful cards that should be hit. But because they don't do enough, Japan are just stating that they shouldn't be hit, which is a massive problem for like the whole structure of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like why cards like Machine Duplication haven't been hit when that card should obviously be banned. It's why you have cards like Soul Charge, which actually should have been like the whole idea for TCG was in that list it was limited to 1, but TCG actually wanted it to be at 3 for another list and then to outright ban it. But because Japan stepped in when they were trying to do their list, they actually forced TCG to put it to 1 in that list. And it's things that Japan have over TCG to control what they want them to take away the control that TCG want to have is also another massive problem with it. Like we don't know if TCG was forced to do this limit or if it was actually TCG's idea. Like that's another massive thing that we don't actually know that could be a problem
about
with
the
Konami in
E-list?
general. Yeah, that could have easily been Japan stepping in.
I think one thing that's very clear is that Konami are they have a lot of issues going on inside, and there is obviously, no real synergy between their departments or the different teams working on things, because, certain things that have happened in the game, like, and all those examples that Tom gave prove that, there's something going wrong with this company.
It's also a problem that Konami don't actually own Yu-Gi-Oh! They license Yu-Gi-Oh! There are 4 companies that actually own Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's Shueisha, that's TV Tokyo, that's Shonen Jump, and that's Kazaki Takahashi. Like, Konami they don't actually own Yu-Gi-Oh! They just license it, and they're just trying to do their best to make it so that these 4 companies are happy with what Konami does. Because at the end of the day, Konami are trying to do a service to make these 4 companies have successful income, and they're trying to do it so that they can keep the licensing going.
Fair enough.
I mean, do you want to go ahead? Go ahead. I mean, there's one really good. Oh.
No, go ahead.
Right.
Like, there's one really good thing about this list is it says it's adjusted and it's not the official ban list. Like, for tournaments, yes, but they said sometime around next month they'll release the actual list. So, which means
When
they
did they
said
say
it'll
that?
incorporate.
They did say that in the blog.
It'll say.
Yeah, they said it could be 1 or 2 months.
It'll say some or all of these changes, which means that what they're doing right now is they're just experimenting to see, like, because they know if they just hit like the perform ages and stuff like that, it'll be just like Japan. Because Japan right now are playing like Draco Slayer EM, which is basically they didn't hit Luster, so they get all the Draco combos off. So instead, they decided to hit Luster here just to experiment and see where the stack goes. I mean, like, if someone creates something really innovative or whatever, and the deck still works, I'm pretty sure they'll be fine with it. But if the deck just, like, plummets, totally sucks until, like, next month when they release the actual ban list, this one's an experimental one, so I'm pretty sure they won't incorporate all the changes, because they'll realize that they hit the deck way too hard.
You really think that there's a chance of... I think that there is 0 chance of them getting their cards back. Anyone else?
No, I 100% agree, because let's be real here.
I think there's 0% chance of them getting their shit back.
Cosmo and Monarch cannot be, like, by definition in Yu-Gi-Oh! As of, like, since, let's say, 2013, right? Since 2013, by definition, Cosmo and Monarchs cannot be the best deck. Like, by definition of how the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has worked. And by that point, like, everyone is going to be either going to Mermail or they're going to be going to Pendulum. And it's obviously that Pendulum is the better.
I don't think Monarchs can. I think Cosmos can.
I think
Cosmos
Monarchs
for sure can't. They can't.
You said what?
They're
Cosmos for sure
inherently
cannot be the best
like limited by their game mechanics. Monarchs are tribute summons. Cosmo is a normal summon reliant
my
deck.
Thing, yeah.
Like that's
the
what
fact
Tom
that you
means
get
by
one
it's
tribute summon
limited.
per turn is just, you know what I mean? Yeah, that inherently limits them in my. Well, I mean, there are cards like Eidos that give you another summon, but there's not enough of those. Like Cosmos, in my opinion, can kind of adapt.
I gotta be right back.
anything.
1 second.
The problem is Cosmos don't have high enough of a ceiling. That is a massive problem with the deck.
You sure about that? I mean, who knows what
100% sure.
Dart Planet could be the most nutty thing that you could think of.
No, I understand. I'm saying, like, as of right now, from the 10th of February, where we have no knowledge about anything from right now, there is no way Cosmo can be the best deck. If something comes out, like, in a new set, which is insane and, like, makes it so that it has a ridiculously high ceiling, I will take my statement back. But as of right now, it cannot be the best deck. It doesn't have high enough ceiling.
I mean, I agree. Like, it's pretty simple. Like, the deck is just limited by its own sort of boundaries. Like, it cannot do anything like outside of its normal summon.
But
I don't know, man. I think Dart Destroyer is a card like you either have an answer to or you lose to.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, how do you get Dart
good.
Destroyer out in the first place? You need to normal summon, and if you don't have that access, you're done.
You got teleport.
Yeah, but the thing is, when it comes to absolute consistency, you've got your teleport, normal summons, and reasoning.
Teleport or normal. Yeah, I'll give you that. But I just feel like if you don't have a direct counter to that card, I just feel like you lose to it because of how strong. I mean, maybe in the future there will be more cards, but I feel like a deck like Perform or Draco Pals, I guess is what they call it now. But it's like if you don't have Ignister, like how do you kill that card?
I mean,
I'll put it like this. Like,
then what are we talking about then? Then what are we talking? If I summon one card and you're telling me you can't kill it except with Ignister, then what are we talking about? Like if you can't kill my one card, I'll keep attacking until you die.
But the thing is, like, it's not that simple. Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna have my Dark Destroyer, and you're not gonna be able to. And what if you can't summon your Ignister? You're gonna lose. It's like the game isn't like that simple. Like, you need to normal summon, and you need to be able to have access to your Dark Destroyer, and unsearchable 3 of. So it's not that, and you can say you have things like e-teleports and reasonings. These are all tools that help you make your deck better, but at the end, like something like a pendulum deck, which is, you know, uniquely synergizes well between each archetype, and each card is able to get access to any other card at any one point, for example, that's like what makes that deck superior, because Cosmo does not have that sort of versatility.
They rely on trap cards to make it so that the other decks can't try and stop them.
Yeah, and by the very definition of a trap card, you're trying to stun your opponent. Why are you trying to stun your opponent? Because they have a better deck.
By putting trap cards in, you're just making your deck worse.
Yeah, you're making your deck worse, and you're trying to stun your opponent, and you're trying to stun your opponent because they have a better deck than you.
It's like floodgates. As soon as you put floodgates into your deck, you're openly admitting that another deck's better than you.
Yeah.
I think that's also one problem with Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't like the fact that decks that don't run traps exist. I mean, I guess rituals are the exception, but I really don't like that.
I mean,
don't
I
like
kind
the
of agree with
ritual
that,
decks
honestly.
constructed.
I mean,
What's
a lot
that?
of decks don't run traps. Like Mermail, for example, didn't run traps. It was better than Fire Fist in the same format. Like
Yeah, but
because
Jerry,
traps
he's
are
saying like
so-
he thinks that's bad. Like that's
But I don't think it's necessarily
I'm-
bad.
Like that just to me that seems like a fundamental flaw when your deck essentially doesn't need to run defensive cards. When I guess if your monsters are the defense.
Yeah.
The only
Unless
reason we
it's-
do that
Go ahead.
is the only reason we do that is because like I for like the last like 2 years or something, I've not really run a deck that played trap cards, and that's because it is not a reliable strategy to rely on trap cards, because if you involve trap cards in your deck, they're all non-searchable. They all take away from your combos and stuff. Like, let's be real, we're not back in 2006. We can't go back to that sort of game where we can try and do the slow strategies and stuff. Like,
You have to slow down the
just
game a lot.
Yeah. Plus, if you're drawing
It
trap
almost
cards,
sounds like-
what if you just draw the wrong one? Like, there are so many times where there are different trap cards for different scenarios, and like that's a massive inherent flaw with trap cards, because you have to run multiple different trap cards, because you can't just play one trap
For
card
different
and
situations,
that'd be
is
it.
what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm saying
Yeah, for
it's not
example,
reliable to
tarantula.
rely on drawing those, because there's too many different ones that you can draw, and that's gonna decrease the chance of you drawing those different cards, because you're making it so that you have so many different cards for so many scenarios, and you're not going to be able to draw out for some scenarios sometimes, and that's just going to make your deck worse, and it's just going to make your variance in bigger events much worse, meaning that you're more likely it's going to be harder for you to top.
I mean,
So
like,
are
for
you-
example, like Torrential, if you draw it a turn late after they have a board, you actually hate the card. But it's a
Yeah,
really
it
good
does-
trap.
It does not. Okay, so it's almost like you're saying that traps themselves have been power creep.
Yeah, traps have
Definitely.
them.
That's exactly what
Okay,
we're
so
saying.
then that would make a card like Solemn Notice fair.
I don't think Solemn Notice is as good. I don't think it's as good as everyone makes it.
I think it's
Because a
fair.
lot of
I
people,
think-
a lot of people would say that that's a broken card, but it's like it's been I think traps have to cover more ground now than ever.
yeah, that's true.
And that's true, but the problem is, like, alright, okay, for this format, Solemn Strike is like a good card in if you're playing a trap heavy deck, because it for the decks that are playing trap cards, it does pretty much everything that you want it to do, and like
you
I
can't
understand
draw it
that.
late. You can't
But,
draw
like-
it late. Like, for example, they have a field, you can use it still, because it negates effects and the summons as well.
But the problem you have to think is, I don't just think of the current format, which is why like I handle ban lists a lot differently to everyone else, and that's why I look at the overview of a card over the entire time, and that's why I think that Solemn Notice in general is a terrible card, because
think
in the
it's
entire
terrible?
overhaul,
It's not terrible.
It's great.
Yeah,
I like
that's
it.
a very strong statement.
it doesn't negate spell and trap cards, which is a massive flaw in it, because you can guarantee in a following format there's going to be a spell card that's going to be way too important in the game, and that's going to make it so that Solemn Strike is just basically worthless, because you're not
Yeah.
going to care as much about.
I
the
agree.
effects
Like
of-
I think
I'd
what
say
you're
that
trying to
card
say is
already
that
exists, and it's
like
called Twin Twister.
Yeah.
No, I mean like a broken spell card. Like
Yeah, but Randall, that's exactly why trap cards are inherently flawed. Like even worse now, and how they've been power creep. Like you have cards like Twin Twister. You know what I mean? Like you're not just gonna lose your TT now. You're gonna lose your TT and your Bottomless and your Strike. And do you know what I mean?
Okay, but then the solution to that would be
You're gonna name like an
it's one
unsearchable
word and
card
it
or
starts
something.
with power and it ends with creep.
Yeah, no, power,
The solution to that would be to power creep traps. This kind of goes back to, I guess, one of my original points of why like certain mechanics, and we're talking about how traps are just bad now. Like certain mechanics have to have power creep to keep up with the Joneses. If that makes sense. That's why I think it was important for rituals to, I guess, become broken. I mean, otherwise, like they just would have never been anything.
But then, like, do you really think that they should have gone to the point where they were, you know, taking the vast majority of every single event?
I mean, sure, why not? Because the reason that
How can you
the
think
way
that's
that I look at
okay?
it- no,
What? What's okay?
just bear with me. Because it's one time in 15 years. I mean,
So you're saying like because it's a special occasion, you know what I mean? But do you not understand how that's so subjective? Like you could say, oh well, Blackwings haven't done anything in whatever time. Let's give them broken support. You know what I mean? Like that's a very subjective thing.
Technically, that's ideal. Technically, if Konami was doing what they're supposed to do, that's technically how it would work. Like a deck would get future. I mean, the reason why it hasn't happened with Blackwings is because the future support that they're giving them fucking sucks dick. You know, have you seen the support for Shining Vic? They're trying to make Blackwings good again. The support is just garbage. But yeah, like essentially, I think that's how Konami would want it is, oh, Cloudians haven't been good in forever. Let's give them some Cloudian support and make them good again.
So
But it just,
you're
like, it never
thinking
comes
that
to fruition.
Yu-Gi-Oh should not be a game based around like balanced decks fighting off against each other. It should just be like, I don't know, like some sort of rotation. Like, you know, oh, it's your turn to be broken. Let's make you broken. Oh, fusions haven't been broken and whatever. Let's make you broken. Like, do you really think that's good?
Balance out every deck. That's the thing. You can't balance out everything to make
We've
everything
gone
good.
past that.
No, of
Yeah,
course, you
maybe-
can't make everything balanced, but you can make things like within range of each other. Like, take Hat, for example. I'm surprised we didn't talk about Hat format more. But if you look at Hat format, you know, everything was able to do okay at that time. You know, you had like
That wasn't everything went okay. That was everything sucked.
I mean, that's your
Everything.
opinion. Fuck you.
But hold on, we also had Infernity as like a tier 1 deck. Like there's never a time where you can say the game was balanced. Like there just isn't. Not
I mean,
since
like-
maybe back in the original Yu-Gi-Oh days.
In terms of like,
But that's it. Go ahead.
I mean, like if you look at like Hat format, like so much stuff did so well then. Like I understand Infernity won Worlds, but I mean, let's not really talk about Worlds because that doesn't really matter. If you look at
Yeah,
the
but
top,
how many decks became good just because of Soul Charge? Like we already talked about it. Infernity, Mythic
yeah, I know.
Rulers, Sylvans. Like so many decks were artificially made good because of one card.
yeah, but they weren't unbeatable. Like they weren't like, you know,
They had inherent flaws.
Yeah,
Every
but-
single one of those decks.
But
had
were they
inherent
degenerative? Was Infernity degenerative or not? Like everybody,
It was
yeah.
pretty
flaws. Of course it
degenerate.
was.
yeah.
All they would
three
do is just they would make Exoton until you didn't have an answer, nuke your field, activate Soul Charge, fucking go YOLO after resolving an Archfiend.
Yeah.
You know what time it was after that. Like I just think I don't know. I feel like if you took the power creep out of the game, you could say, all right, let's take power creep completely out, and you'd have to make the ban list fucking 500 cards. Like, okay,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like,
Guard
I kind of mentioned
Guard
this. I
Destroyer's
feel
too
like
broken. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Let's
Yeah.
be real. If we were playing a game where everything was supposed to be balanced, Hydrogeddon would be the best card in the game.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, you
Correct,
raise a good
Lyra.
point. Like, if we were to make the game fair again, what we need to do is like start fresh. Like that's exactly what we'd have to do. Konami would have to like put everything that we've known in like the past, like I don't know, like 3-4 years on the ban list, and then we
Not
would
even
just go
Takes
from the
away
ground
what
up.
Konami does.
You
Konami's
have to
special
reach
because
the
it
game
actually
target.
enables it.
you-
But that's taking away from Konami because Konami's special because it allows you to play every single card. That's the thing that
Yeah,
steps
No,
Konami.
no,
out
but
of
I
everything else.
understand what Nahir is saying. Essentially, he's right though. Like if they were going to take power creep away, they would basically have to ban like because like
Oh,
a
no,
card
I
like
agree.
Dark Destroyer. That's too broken. The entire Magic Specters, the fact that Magic Specters can't be targeted or destroyed by effects as an entire archetype and suck is insane.
I know, I agree. That's crazy.
You can't have a
too.
pendulum mechanic in a balanced game.
Yeah, like it would basically not be the same. That's what I'm saying. It's not even feasible to talk about no power creep. It's just you'd essentially have to completely restart Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
And eventually you do realize the same cycle would happen, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, like,
Yeah, like
Because it's the same
as
people
long
doing
as there are differences, there will be tiers. That's a fact. There will be tiers. You can have there can be an R&D team to infinity. There will be tiers. Thus, there will be, you know what I mean? There will always be inequality. Or that's not the word I'm looking for. You know what I'm talking about, right?
yeah. I'm gonna have to like wrap this up in just a little bit. We're gonna continue our the end tournament if you don't mind. So if we can, like,
Okay, man.
if you have some like last
Yeah.
points and stuff you guys want to put in.
Nah, man. I was supposed to leave about 15 minutes ago, but
This was fun.
yeah,
Good chat.
This was fun.
I completely agree. You guys have a very nice day.